is the founder of the Daily Skeptic website, where you can read all about Dame Jenny, and also of the Free Speech Union. This is beyond pathetic. It was hot for 3 days, but we've had excess mortality for getting on for 7-8 months now.
Yes, I mean, it's almost like a parody. Rather than a serious explanation. Yeah, as you say, excess deaths have been running high since last April, and they're continuing to run high. There were more than 900 excess deaths per week on average in October. So they both predate and postdate what, as you point out, was a fairly short heat wave. So the idea that climate change is responsible, the hot weather is responsible for these excess deaths, is just for the birds. And as we know, actually, we are, in terms of lives saved, we're net beneficiaries from climate change. According to the Office for National Statistics figures, many more people survived in the past 20 years as a result of the milder winters than died as a result of slightly warmer summers. So, you know, we are net beneficiaries of the fractionally small rise in average temperatures.
Aren't you making the mistake just in pointing that out, which is true, but aren't you making the mistake of treating this ridiculous claim seriously? I mean, at a certain point, I mean, it's about as basic as it can get. If you turn to government for everything, as people do these days, well, the government not having anything to say about large numbers of dead people is about as basic as it gets. And when they come up with, there were 3 hot days and it's caused 9 months of excess, what is that? Like the heat wave version of long COVID? It'll get you, the hot day will get you 4 months down the line. I mean, why? At a certain point, you just have to, this is not even up to the level of bureaucratic official nonsense.
Yes, I mean, it does seem to be taking us for fools. I mean, I'm not particularly impressed by the more conventional explanation for the number of excess deaths this year, which is to do with delays and backlogs in the NHS, the fact that there's a waiting list of over 7.5 million for elective surgery. Lots of people didn't go to hospital in order to protect the NHS, so conditions which could have been nipped in the bud have got worse and killed them, and so on and so forth. That, of course, may be a factor. But the elephant in the room, the thing we're not allowed to discuss, is the possible role that the mRNA vaccines have been playing in causing excess deaths. Now, we know that the COVID vaccines can cause heart problems, they can cause blood clotting problems. A lot of the excess deaths have been due to heart conditions, heart attacks. Now, there's no disagreement, I don't think. There's no kind of controversy about whether the vaccines cause heart problems and blood clotting problems. The controversy is, the thing people disagree about is, well, how prevalent are those problems? Are they very rare adverse effects of the mRNA vaccines, or are they possibly responsible, in part at least, for this wave of excess deaths? We're not allowed to talk about that.
You're being the soul of generosity there when you say there's no dispute that there are still people who are wedded to the fairy tale of late 2020 when these things were announced, and they were miracle drugs, and they would prevent you getting the disease and prevent you passing it on. And as you say, that story has shifted. At some point, because it goes across Europe, it's North America, Australia and New Zealand, which had low COVID deaths, have had terrible excess mortality since they began vaccinating people. At what point do these guys at G20 say, you know, maybe this is something we should be talking about instead of sea levels in the Maldives?
I think it's they will strain every sinew not to talk about it, to avoid that subject. I think the people at the G20, the kind of global cognitive ruling elite, they want to take credit for having rescued us from this deadly pandemic, because they got behind the development of these miraculous vaccines. They rolled out these vaccines. They've saved the planet. That is the source now of their authority. They can't really expect people, I think, to trust them to get things right because of their expertise expertise, their supposedly high intelligence, because they keep making fundamental mistakes. But I think that they've now kind of gone all in on we saved the planet with these wonder drugs. So they're very reluctant, I think, to accept any possibility that they might actually be killing people.
Let me ask you about another topic before you take off, because I'm fascinated at how this stuff just keeps going on. The universities are being told they have to decolonize their curricula, which means, I take it, that you can't teach that the British Empire was the best thing that happened to the world, and if you had the good fortune to be incorporated within Her Majesty's dominions, life looked up for you compared to almost all the alternatives. Apparently that's a controversial position these days.
Yeah, no, this is actually a great story. It was a story in the Mail. So QAA, the Quality Assurance Agency, has
what is that?
It's a charity funded by universities. It gets over £1 million of taxpayers' money a year to produce advice about what courses universities should be teaching, so they can be of a global standard, gold-plated courses. And let me just tell you what some of the bizarre things they've recommended. They've said that computing courses should address how, quote, hierarchies of colonial value are reinforced in computing. They've said about language courses.
Wait a minute. I don't think they had computers in the British Empire. That was one of the great things about it. You couldn't go on Twitter in Basuto land.
Yeah, it's bizarre. They've said language courses. So from now on, universities are told they need to encourage students to reflect on, quote, this is when learning Spanish, French, German, quote, historical and contemporary forms of injustice and inequality related to imperialism, colonialism, class or gender divisions. I mean, it is extraordinary. They're effectively telling universities, whatever course students choose to study, they're going to get critical race theory. Like Henry Ford's line about, it doesn't matter what colour you paint the door, so long as it's black.
Right. And that's the thing. It's all right if they do it with these, phony subjects like transgender studies or whatever. Once they're doing it in physics, then at a certain point, planes are going to be dropping out of the sky from this kind of thing.
It's all part of the decolonization agenda. Mathematics, science, computer science, they all have to be decolonized according to these kind of woke fanatics. I mean, not realizing actually that in kind of propagating this cult, they are illustrating the fact that their minds have been colonized by American grievance studies departments.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. It's American racial grievance politics imposed on the rest of the planet that, on the whole, doesn't share that experience.
That's the real form of colonialism, and it's unfolding right in front of their noses.
And it's interesting, actually, when you look at the protests in Hong Kong, where they're protesting against some serious colonization, and they're all waving their little British red ensigns from colonial Hong Kong. They'd love to be recolonized, a recolonization agenda.